Have you ever wondered if it's too late to find your passion? What if the key to healing a broken heart lies in the most unexpected place? Today's story proves it's never too late to start anew, even after the greatest loss. The untouched breakfast sat cold on the mahogany table, just like yesterday's lunch and the dinner before that. Harrison Webb stared at the scrambled eggs that had long since turned gray, the toast that could now break windows, and the orange juice that had formed a thin film on top. Around him, the 30-room mansion stretched in every direction, each space more hollow than the last. 6 months. It had been 6 months since the accident that took everything from him. His wife Claire's laugh no longer echoed through the halls. His son Jake's basketball no longer bounced against the garage door. The silence was so thick he could taste it, bitter and metallic, coating his tongue like medicine he refused to swallow. Harrison pushed the plate away and walked to the massive window overlooking the manicured gardens. 53 years old, worth $200 million, and he had never felt more worthless in his life. The gardeners moved like ants below, tending to roses Claire had picked out, maintaining the hedge maze where Jake used to play hide and seek. Everything reminded him of what he'd lost. The doorbell rang, cutting through his thoughts like a knife. Harrison ignored it. He'd been ignoring everything lately. Phone calls from his business partner, visits from concerned friends, invitations to charity galas where people would look at him with those pitying eyes and whisper about the poor widower who'd lost his mind along with his family. But wait, can you really judge a man who's lost everything? Who sits in a house that feels more like a mausoleum than a home? What would you do if tragedy struck and left you completely alone? Mrs. Henderson, his longtime housekeeper who'd retired last month, had insisted on finding her replacement. "You need someone to look after you, Mr. Webb," she'd said with the authority of someone who'd watched him grow from a struggling businessman into a titan of industry. "You're wasting away." The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Harrison heard footsteps. His secretary must have let someone in. He should go downstairs. Should act like the CEO everyone expected him to be. Instead, he remained frozen at the window, watching shadows lengthen across the grounds where his family used to run and play. "Mr. Webb," a gentle voice called from the doorway. Harrison turned to see a woman in her early 30s, African-American with kind brown eyes and natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with quiet dignity. Beside her stood a little girl with pigtails and the biggest smile he'd seen in months. "I'm Patricia Johnson," the woman said. "Mrs. Henderson sent me. This is my daughter, Amelia." The child waved enthusiastically, completely unaware of the heavy atmosphere that had settled over the house like fog. "Hi, Mr. Webb. Mama says you have the biggest house in the whole world. Is that true?" Harrison found himself studying the girl's face. She couldn't be more than 8 years old, with bright, curious eyes that seemed to see right through his carefully constructed walls. There was something about her energy, her complete lack of fear or judgment, that made the air feel lighter. "It's pretty big." Harrison managed his voice from disuse. "Can I see your kitchen? Mama's the best cook ever, and she's going to make you feel better." Amelia bounced on her toes, her enthusiasm infectious despite Harrison's determination to remain unmoved. Patricia placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Amelia, remember what we talked about? Mr. Webb might need some quiet time." But Harrison surprised himself by saying, "The kitchen is downstairs, second door on the left." As they walked through the mansion, Amelia's chatter filled the spaces that had been silent for so long. She asked about everything. Why were the ceilings so tall? Did he really need 20 bedrooms? Had he counted all the windows? Her questions weren't intrusive or annoying. They were genuine, innocent, the kind of wonder that reminded Harrison of Jake at that age. In the kitchen, Patricia began organizing with quiet efficiency while Amelia explored with wide-eyed amazement. "Mr. Webb, do you have any coloring books?" she asked suddenly. "I don't think so," Harrison replied, realizing how strange his house must seem to a child. "No toys, no games, no signs the children had ever lived here." "That's okay. I brought my own." Amelia pulled a coloring book and a box of crayons from her mother's bag. She settled at the kitchen island and began working on a picture of a rainbow, her tongue poking out in concentration. Patricia moved around the kitchen with practiced grace, checking the refrigerator and pantry. "When did you last eat a proper meal, Mr. Webb?" she asked gently. Harrison couldn't remember. Days blurred together in a haze of skip meals and sleepless nights. "I'm not very hungry these days. That's what Mama said would happen." Amelia piped up without looking up from her coloring. She said, "Sometimes when people are very sad, they forget to take care of themselves. But she's really good at remembering for them." The simple wisdom of a child hit Harrison harder than any lecture from his friends or family. This little girl understood something that grown adults with degrees and decades of life experience had failed to grasp. She didn't try to fix his grief or minimize his pain. She simply accepted it and offered kindness without expecting anything in return. Patricia began preparing lunch, and for the first time in months, Harrison found himself actually paying attention to the smells coming from his kitchen. The sizzle of vegetables in a pan, the warm scent of bread heating in the oven, the gentle humming of someone who found joy in simple tasks. Mr. Webb, Amelia said, holding up her finished rainbow. This is for you, Mama says. Rainbows come after storms, and I thought maybe you needed to remember that. Harrison took the drawing with hands that trembled slightly. The rainbow was imperfect, the colors bleeding outside the lines, but it was the most beautiful thing anyone had given him in months. For the first time since the accident, tears came to his eyes. Not from pain, but from something he thought was gone forever. Oh, the drawing stayed on Harrison's nightstand for 3 days before he finally moved it to his office, propped against his computer monitor where he could see it during video calls. His business partner, Richard Sterling, raised an eyebrow during their morning meeting, but said nothing. Harrison found himself touching the edge of the paper whenever stress crept in, remembering Camelia's serious little face as she'd explained about rainbows and storms. Patricia came every weekday, arriving at 8 o'clock in the morning with Amelia in tow before school. The little girl would wave goodbye from the car window, her backpack bouncing as her grandmother picked her up for school. Then Patricia would begin her quiet work, moving through the mansion like a gentle breeze, restoring order without disturbing the memories that lived in every corner. She didn't try to change everything at once. Claire's pictures remained exactly where she'd placed them. Jake's basketball shoes still sat by the back door, but slowly, carefully, Patricia began to breathe life back into the house. Fresh flowers appeared on tables, windows were open to let in sunlight. The kitchen started to smell like home again instead of sadness. On Thursday morning, Harrison found a note tucked under his coffee cup. Written in careful 8-year-old handwriting, it said, "Dear Mr. Webb, I hope you have a good day today. Love, Amelia. Piss. Mama made your favorite soup for lunch." He didn't remember telling anyone his favorite soup was tomato basil, but somehow Patricia had figured it out, maybe from the 3 cans of Campbell that had been sitting unopened in his pantry for months, the only food he'd managed to eat with any regularity before she arrived. That afternoon, when Patricia brought Amelia back from school, Harrison was waiting in the kitchen. The little girl dropped her backpack and ran to him with the enthusiasm of someone greeting a favorite relative. "Mr. Webb, did you like my note? I made it in art class when we were supposed to be making Mother's Day cards, but I thought you might need a happy note more than Mama needs another card." "I loved it," Harrison said, and meant it. "How was school?" Amelia's face scrunched up. "Math is hard. Mrs. Thompson says we have to learn multiplication tables, but I don't understand why we need to memorize them when we have calculators." Harrison found himself smiling for the first time in weeks. "Want to know a secret? Math isn't about the calculators. It's about training your brain to see patterns. Once you understand the patterns, everything else makes sense." "Really?" Amelia climbed onto the stool next to him, suddenly interested. For the next hour, Harrison found himself explaining multiplication using cookies from the jar Patricia had filled. 2 groups of 3 cookies, 3 groups of 4. Amelia caught on quickly, her excitement growing with each problem she solved correctly. Patricia watched from across the kitchen, pretending to organize the pantry while her daughter and Harrison worked together. There was something healing about the scene, something that made the massive kitchen feel cozy instead of cavernous. "Mama, look," Amelia called out. "Mr. Webb taught me the 7 times table using cookies." "That's wonderful, baby, but now we need to let Mr. Webb have some quiet time." "Actually," Harrison said quickly, surprising himself, "would you both like to stay for dinner? I mean, if you don't have other plans." Patricia hesitated. "That's very kind, but we don't want to impose." "Please, Mama." Amelia bounced on her stool. "Mr. Webb has that big table that could fit like 100 people, but he eats all by himself. That's too sad." The innocent observation hit Harrison like a physical blow out of the mouths of babes. This 8-year-old girl had identified the core of his pain more clearly than any therapist. He wasn't just grieving his family, he was drowning in the loneliness of a house built for love that now held only one. "She's right," Harrison said quietly. "It is too sad, and I'd really like the company." Dinner was simple: grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, and rolls that Patricia had made from scratch. But it was the first meal Harrison had enjoyed in months. Amelia tattered about her day, her dreams of becoming a doctor, like the one who had helped her when she broke her arm the previous year, and her theory that dogs could understand human feelings better than most people. "My grandma says dogs have special powers," Amelia explained. "Seriously, they can tell when you're sad, and they'll sit with you until you feel better. Maybe you should get a dog." "Mr. Webb, I've never been much of a pet person," Harrison admitted. "That's because you haven't met the right dog yet. When I grow up and become a doctor, I'm going to have lots of dogs and they'll help me make my patients feel better." Patricia smiled at her daughter's grand plans. "Amelia wants to be a pediatric veterinarian this week. Last week, she wanted to be an astronaut chef." "I can be lots of things," Amelia said matter-of-factly. "Jake probably wanted to be lots of things, too." The mention of his son's name should have sent Harrison into the familiar spiral of grief. Instead, he found himself talking about Jake's dreams, his love of basketball, his terrible jokes that had made Claire groan, and Harrison laughed despite himself. For the first time since the accident, talking about his son felt like honoring his memory instead of reopening a wound. After dinner, as Patricia cleaned up despite Harrison's protests, Amelia presented him with another drawing. This one showed three stick figures standing in front of a big house. A tall man, a shorter woman, and a little girl with pigtails. "That's us," she explained, "having dinner together so nobody has to be sad and alone." Harrison stared at the drawing, overwhelmed by the simple generosity of a child who barely knew him, but had somehow decided he deserved kindness, in her innocent way. Amelia was showing him what his life could be, not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and precious in its own right. That night, after Patricia and Amelia had gone home to their apartment across town, Harrison sat in his study holding both drawings. The house felt different. Still quiet, but not oppressively so, still empty, but not hopeless. For the first time in 6 months, Harrison Webb went to sleep thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday. 2 weeks into their routine, Harrison found himself looking forward to Amelia's afternoon visits with an anticipation that surprised him. Her backpack dropping by the door had become the sound that marked the end of his workday, even when he had important calls scheduled or contracts to review. "Mr. Webb, I got an A on my math test," Amelia announced on a particularly gray Tuesday, bursting through the kitchen door like a small tornado of excitement. "Mrs. Thompson said I was the only one who got all the word problems right." Harrison felt a swell of pride that caught him off guard. "That's fantastic. I knew you were smart. Mama says smart isn't enough. You have to work hard too." Amelia began unpacking her homework on the kitchen island, spreading papers and books with the organized chaos only children could master. "Can you help me with my reading assignment? It's about this girl who moves to a new school and doesn't have any friends." As they worked through this story together, Harrison realized how much he'd missed this kind of simple interaction. With Jake, homework time had often been a battle of wills, especially during the teenage years when everything Harrison said was either embarrassing or wrong. But Amelia approached learning with genuine curiosity, asking questions that made Harrison think about familiar concepts in new ways. "Why do you think Sarah feels nervous about the new school?" Harrison asked, pointing to a passage in the book. Amelia considered this seriously, her chin resting on her hand. "Because when you don't know anybody, you don't know if they'll be nice to you or not. Like when Mama and I moved here from Atlanta, I was scared the kids would think I talked funny or wouldn't want to play with me. Do you miss Atlanta sometimes? But Mama says home isn't a place. It's the people who love you, so wherever we are together is home." She looked up at Harrison with those wise 8-year-old eyes. "Do you feel at home here?" The question hit deeper than she probably intended. This mansion had been home when it was filled with Claire's laughter and Jake's music. Now it felt more like an expensive hotel where he happened to sleep. "I'm working on it," Harrison said honestly. After they finished the reading assignment, Amelia surprised him by pulling out a small photo album. "Want to see pictures of me and Mama?" Harrison found himself looking at snapshots of their life. Patricia and Amelia at various ages, sometimes with an older woman Harrison assumed was Amelia's grandmother. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, trips to the zoo. What struck him wasn't the obvious love between mother and daughter, but how happy they looked despite their modest circumstances. "This is when I lost my first tooth." Amelia pointed to a gap-toothed grin. "And this is Mama's graduation from nursing school. She studied really hard for 3 years while Grandma watched me." "Your mom is a nurse?" Harrison asked, surprised. He'd assumed Patricia was a career housekeeper. She was, but the hospital where she worked closed down and she couldn't find another job that paid enough for daycare and rent. That's why she cleans houses now, but she says it's temporary until I'm old enough to stay by myself after school. The casual way Amelia shared this information made Harrison's chest tight. Patricia was clearly intelligent and educated, working as a housekeeper, not by choice, but by necessity. He thought about his own privileged life, how he never had to choose between career aspirations and paying bills. "Mama doesn't like to talk about money stuff," Amelia continued, "but I hear her on the phone sometimes with Grandma worrying about things. I wish I could help her, but she says my job is just to be a kid and do good in school." That evening, Harrison found himself researching nursing jobs in the area. There were several hospitals within driving distance, and most were advertising for experienced nurses. He made a few discreet phone calls to contacts in the medical field, not to pull strings, but to understand what barriers Patricia might be facing. The next morning, he approached Patricia carefully as she organized his home office. "Patricia, can I ask you something personal?" She looked up from dusting his bookshelf, weariness flickering across her features. "Of course, Mr. Webb. Amelia mentioned you're a nurse. Are you planning to return to healthcare?" Patricia's shoulders tensed. "Eventually. When the right opportunity comes along." "What would make an opportunity right for you?" She was quiet for a long moment, still holding the dust cloth. "Decent hours so I can be home when Amelia gets out of school. Benefits because a single mother can't risk being uninsured, and a salary that covers our rent and expenses without me having to work multiple jobs. Those seem like reasonable requirements." "They should be," Patricia said with a slight edge to her voice. "But most positions want someone who can work nights, weekends, overtime without notice." I can't do that to my daughter, she needs stability. Harrison nodded, filing away this information. That afternoon, when Amelia was working on her homework, he mentioned casually that he'd heard Children's Hospital was looking for day shift nurses. Really? Patricia's face lit up before she caught herself. I should look into that. I have a friend on their board. Would you like me to put in a good word? Patricia hesitated, pride wearing with practicality. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's networking. I've built my entire career on people putting in good words for each other. Besides, Harrison smiled, if you worked there, you'd have better hours. Which means Amelia could keep coming here after school. I'd call that a win-win. Amelia looked up from her math worksheet. Mama, remember what you always tell me? When someone offers to help, you say thank you and accept it graciously. Patricia laughed despite herself, throwing my own words back at me. Huh? Please, Mama. I like coming here and Mr. Webb likes having us. Right, Mr. Webb, right, Harrison agreed, realizing how true it had become. These daily visits had become the highlight of his routine, the thing that made him get dressed in the morning and remember that life could still hold pleasant surprises. Okay, Patricia said finally, thank you. I'd appreciate any help you can offer. Later that week, Patricia had an interview at Children's Hospital. Harrison found himself more nervous than he'd been about his own business deals, checking his phone repeatedly for updates. When she called to say she'd gotten the job, starting the following Monday with full benefits and a schedule that matched Amelia's school hours, his relief was overwhelming. I can't thank you enough, Patricia said when she and Amelia came by that evening to share the good news. You don't need to thank me. You earned it with your qualifications and experience. Still, Patricia insisted, you didn't have to help. Most employers wouldn't have cared about their housekeeper's other career goals. Harrison realized she still saw him as just her employer. The thought bothered him more than it should have. Patricia, you're not just my housekeeper. You and Amelia have become important to me. She studied his face and he saw the moment she understood what he was really saying. That somewhere in the past month they'd crossed a line from professional to personal. That her daughter's drawings were treasured possessions, and her presence in his house had become essential to his healing. You've become important to us, too, she said softly. Amelia, oblivious to the undercurrents, threw her arms around Harrison's waist. Does this mean we're friends now? Real friends? Harrison hugged her back, feeling something shift in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 6 months was finally beginning to thaw. Yes, he said, we're real friends. Patricia's first week at Children's Hospital coincided with Harrison's return to regular business travel. For the first time since the accident, he found himself reluctant to leave town. Not because of work anxiety, but because he'd miss his afternoon routine with Amelia. It's only 3 days, Patricia reminded him as she packed his lunch. She'd started doing little things like this without being asked, gestures that made his house feel cared for in ways he hadn't realized he'd been missing. I know it's just Harrison struggled to put his feelings into words. I've gotten used to having you both here. Amelia looked up from her cereal bowl. We'll miss you too, Mr. Webb, but Mama says missing people proves you love them. The word hung in the air, simple and complicated all at once. Harrison did love them, he realized, not romantically, not yet, but with a deep affection that had crept up on him while he wasn't paying attention. This little girl had somehow claimed a piece of his heart, and her mother had quietly become the person he most looked forward to seeing each day. While Harrison was in Chicago closing a deal that would have excited him 6 months ago, but now felt routine, Amelia got sick. Patricia called him at his hotel room, apologizing for bothering him. She has a fever and she's asking for you, Patricia said, sounding tired and worried. I told her you were traveling, but she keeps saying she wants to show you the get well card she made for herself. I'll be home tomorrow evening, Harrison said immediately. Is there anything she needs? Anything I can do? You don't have to. I mean, we're not your responsibility. Harrison felt a flash of frustration. After weeks of growing closeness, Patricia still maintained professional boundaries that he increasingly wanted to cross. You are my responsibility, he said firmly. Both of you. If Amelia needs something, I want to know about it. There was silence on the other end, and Harrison worried he'd overstepped. But then Patricia's voice came through softer than before. She'd probably like it if you called to say goodnight. She's been sleeping in my bed because she doesn't feel well. But she might talk to you for a few minutes. Harrison spent 20 minutes on the phone with a feverish 8-year-old. Listening to her raspy voice describe the card she'd made, complete with a drawing of a thermometer with a sad face. By the time he hung up, he changed his flight to leave first thing in the morning instead of staying for the optional dinner meeting. He arrived home to find Patricia's car in his driveway and voices coming from the family room, a space that had been unused since the accident. Harrison followed the sound to find Patricia reading to Amelia, who was curled up on the couch under a blanket, still pale but clearly feeling better. Mr. Webb. Amelia's face lit up when she saw him. You came home early. I couldn't miss seeing your get well card, Harrison said, settling into the chair across from them. Patricia started to move, but he waved her back down. Don't get up. You both look comfortable. The card was indeed a masterpiece, featuring not just the sad thermometer, but also a superhero version of Harrison labeled Mr. Webb the fever fighter and a portrait of Patricia with angel wings and a stethoscope. Mama took care of me, but I kept thinking about how you helped me with math when I didn't feel good about it, Amelia explained. So, I wanted you to help me feel better about being sick. Too. Harrison felt his throat tighten with emotion. This child's capacity for love and trust continued to amaze him. She'd somehow decided he belonged in her world, and more surprisingly, he'd started to believe it himself. Are you hungry? Patricia asked. I made soup. They ate dinner together in the family room. Something that would have been unthinkable weeks ago, but now felt natural. Amelia, still recovering, fell asleep against her mother's shoulder during the movie they'd put on. Patricia started to wake her, but Harrison stopped her. Let her sleep. She's been sick. I should take her home. Stay, Harrison said impulsively. There are guest rooms upstairs. She'll sleep better if you don't have to wake her up and drive across town. Patricia hesitated. That's very generous, but what? It feels like we're taking advantage of your kindness. Harrison looked at this woman who had quietly become essential to his daily happiness, holding her sleeping daughter who had somehow convinced him that life was still worth living. Patricia, what would it take for you to stop seeing this as charity and start seeing it as friendship? As caring, she studied his face in the dim light from the television. I guess I'm afraid to get too comfortable. Good things in my life have a tendency to disappear. What happened to Camelia's father? Harrison asked gently. Patricia's jaw tightened. He decided being a parent was too hard and too expensive. Left when Amelia was 4 with promises to stay in touch and help support her. We haven't heard from him since. I'm not going anywhere, Harrison said firmly. You and Amelia have given me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Why would I walk away from that? What have we given you? Harrison considered how to explain something he barely understood himself. Purpose. Joy. A reason to get up in the morning that isn't just about making money or filling time. Amelia sees the world the way Jake used to, with wonder and optimism. And you? He paused, suddenly aware they were entering dangerous territory. You make everything feel possible again. Patricia shifted Amelia's weight so she could look at Harrison directly. I feel the same way. For the first time since Amelia's father left. I feel like we're not just surviving, like we might actually build something good. They stayed like that for a long moment. The sleeping child between them, both afraid to say too much, but unwilling to say too little. Finally, Patricia carried Amelia upstairs to one of the guest rooms Harrison had prepared, complete with fresh pajamas he'd asked his assistant to buy. Thank you, Patricia said when she came back downstairs to find Harrison tidying up their dinner dishes. For everything, the job referral, the kindness to Amelia tonight. I know you don't owe us any of this. I don't do it because I owe you anything, Harrison said. I do it because you matter to me, both of you. Patricia stepped closer, close enough that Harrison could smell her shampoo, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. For a moment, he thought she might kiss him. Instead, she reached up and straightened his collar, a gesture so domestic and intimate it made his heart race. We matter to you, too, she said quietly, more than we probably should. That night, Harrison lay awake listening to the sounds of people sleeping in his house. For the first time since the accident, the mansion didn't feel empty. It felt like what it was supposed to be, a home where people who cared about each other could rest safely. In the morning, Amelia bounced into his bedroom at 7 o'clock a.m., completely recovered and excited about having had a sleepover. Mr. Webb, can we make pancakes? Mama said I could ask. But I couldn't jump on your bed. Good thing you listened to your mother. Harrison said, sitting up and ruffling her hair. And yes, we can make pancakes. As they cooked breakfast together, all three of them moving around the kitchen with easy familiarity, Harrison realized something had fundamentally shifted. They weren't just employer and employee anymore, or even just friends. They were becoming something like a family, built not on blood or legal obligation but on choice and affection. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with a happiness he thought was gone forever. The Saturday morning trip to the zoo happened almost by accident. Amelia had been reading about elephants for a school project, and Harrison offhandedly mentioned that the city zoo had a new elephant exhibit. Her eyes lit up with such excitement that refusing to take her would have been cruel. Are you sure you don't mind? Patricia asked as they piled into Harrison's SUV, Amelia bouncing in the back seat with barely contained energy. I haven't been to a zoo in 20 years, Harrison admitted. I'm curious to see what's changed. Everything had changed, but not in ways Harrison had expected. The zoo of his memory was tired and dated, with concrete enclosures and bored animals. This version was transformed with natural habitats and interactive exhibits designed to educate as much as entertain. But what struck him most was seeing it through Amelia's eyes. She read every information plaque aloud, asked the volunteers dozens of questions, and insisted on sketching her favorite animals in the notebook she'd brought along. At the elephant exhibit, she stood pressed against the viewing window for 20 minutes, completely mesmerized. Did you know elephants can recognize themselves in mirrors? She told Harrison, seriously, that means they're really smart like people. What else do you know about elephants? They live in families led by the grandmother elephant. and they never forget anything important, and when one of them dies, the others get really sad and visit the place where it happened. Amelia paused, looking up at Harrison with sudden understanding. Kind of like you. Huh? Still missing Jake and Claire even though they're gone. The observation should have been painful, but somehow Amelia's matter-of-fact acceptance of grief made it easier to bear. Yeah, kind of like that. But elephants still take care of each other and have babies and do elephant things even when they're sad. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do, too. Patricia overheard this exchange and gave Harrison an apologetic look. But he shook his head. Amelia's innocent wisdom often cut straight to Trude's adults danced around. He was still doing human things, still taking care of people. Maybe that was enough for now. At the petting zoo, Amelia convinced both adults to feed the goats. Laughing as the animals' rough tongues tickled their palms, Harrison found himself relaxing in ways he hadn't in months. Caught up in the simple pleasure of a child's laughter, Mr. Wub, look, Amelia called out. A baby goat had climbed onto her lap and fallen asleep. I think he likes me. Who wouldn't like you? Harrison said and meant it. They spent the entire day at the zoo, longer than Harrison had spent anywhere purely for enjoyment since the accident. By the time they loaded back into the car, Amelia was exhausted, but still chattering about everything they'd seen. Can we come back next month? I want to see the lions when they're awake. Of course, Harrison said without thinking, then caught Patricia's eye in the rearview mirror. They'd made plans a month in advance, as if their current arrangement was permanent. The realization didn't scare him as much as it should have. Over dinner at a family restaurant Amelia chose, Harrison watched Patricia help her daughter navigate the children's menu and felt something settle in his chest. This was what contentment felt like, he realized. Not the sharp high of closing a big deal or the satisfaction of beating competitors, but this quiet happiness that came from being exactly where you belonged. Penny, for your thoughts, Patricia said after Amelia had gone to play in the restaurant's small arcade. Just thinking how different today was from what I expected my life to look like. Good, different, or bad, different, very good, different. Harrison smiled, watching Amelia through the glass doors as she concentrated on a basketball shooting game. 6 months ago, I couldn't imagine enjoying anything again. Today, I spent 8 hours looking at animals and had the best time I've had in years. Patricia reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. Claire and Jake would be happy to see you healing. You think so? I know so. From everything you've told me about them, they loved you too much to want you to stay broken forever. That evening, as they stood on Harrison's front porch saying goodbye, Amelia hugged him with the fierce intensity only children could muster. Thank you for the best day ever, she said into his chest. I wish every day could be like today. Maybe they can be, Harrison said, surprising himself with the words. After they left, Harrison sat in his study looking at the photos Amelia had drawn throughout the day. Elephants with oversized ears, lions with magnificent manes, and on the last page, a drawing of 3 people holding hands in front of the zoo entrance. The same 3 figures from her earlier drawing, but this time they looked like they belonged together. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning when Richard Sterling showed up unannounced at Harrison's house. Patricia answered the door, professional and polite, but Harrison could see his business partner's expression shift as he took in her appearance. I didn't realize you had company, Richard said when Harrison joined them in the foyer. Patricia works here, Harrison explained simply. Patricia, this is my business partner, Richard Sterling. Richard, this is Patricia Johnson. Richard's handshake was profunder, his smile not reaching his eyes. Harrison felt a familiar knot form in his stomach. He'd seen that look before, usually directed at people Richard considered beneath his notice. They conducted their business meeting in Harrison's office, but Richard seemed distracted, his attention drifting whenever Patricia moved through the house during her work. Finally, as they were wrapping up, Richard couldn't contain himself any longer. Harrison, can I speak frankly? You always do. I'm concerned about your judgment lately. Missing the Chicago dinner, cutting short the Dallas trip, and now I find you've gotten involved with your domestic help. Harrison felt anger rise in his chest, hot and protective. Involved how? Come on, Harrison. I've known you for 15 years. I can see the way you look at her. The way she moves around your house like she owns it. You're vulnerable right now, grieving, not thinking clearly. My thinking is perfectly clear, is it? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're having some kind of midlife crisis. First you disappear from social functions, then you start playing house with the help. What's next? Are you going to adopt some strays and turn into a hermit? The casual cruelty of Richard's words hit Harrison like a physical blow. Patricia and her daughter aren't strays. They're good people who've shown me more genuine kindness in 2 months than I've received from our entire social circle. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're confusing gratitude with something else. Look, I get it. You're lonely. You're hurting. And along comes this attractive woman with a cute kid who makes you feel needed. But you're a billionaire, Harrison. There are consequences to these kinds of relationships. What kind of relationship do you think this is? Richard's expression was patronizing. The look of someone explaining basic facts to a child. The kind that ends badly. Either she's after your money, which makes you a target, or she's genuinely sweet, which makes her a liability. Either way, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Harrison stood up, his decision made. I think we're done here. Harrison, be reasonable. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to protect your business interests. You're worried that if I'm happy, I might not be as driven to make you richer. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you asked how I was doing? Not how the business was doing, not how my recovery was affecting our bottom line, but how I was actually feeling. Richard opened and closed his mouth, apparently unable to answer. I thought so. Let me make this simple for you, Richard. Patricia and Amelia matter to me more than business dinners, more than networking events, more than maintaining appearances for people who don't actually care about my well-being. If that's a problem for you, we can dissolve our partnership. You throw away 20 years of business success for your housekeeper. The dismissive way Richard said, housekeeper, made Harrison's jaw clench. I'd throw it away for my family. And that's what they are to me now, whether you understand it or not. After Richard left, Harrison found Patricia in the kitchen, her movement stiff with suppressed emotion. She'd obviously heard at least part of the conversation. You didn't have to defend us like that, she said without looking at him. Yes, I did. He's not wrong about some things. There are consequences to whatever this is between us. People will talk. They'll assume things. Harrison moved closer, wanting to comfort her, but uncertain how. What do you think this is between us? Patricia finally looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I think it's the most important relationship I've had since Amelia was born. And I think it scares me how much I care about you. Why does that scare you? Because I've been on my own for 4 years. I've gotten used to not depending on anyone, not expecting anyone to stay. And then you come along and you're kind and generous and wonderful with my daughter, and I start to imagine things that probably aren't realistic. What kind of things? Patricia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Things like you loving us, not just caring about us or feeling grateful for our company, but actually loving us the way we love you. The admission hung between them. Brave and vulnerable, Harrison felt his heart rate accelerate as he processed what she just said. You love me, we both do. Camille's been drawing pictures of you as her dad for weeks. And she took a shaky breath. I fall asleep thinking about what it would be like to wake up next to you. I daydream about family dinners and helping you with work problems and growing old together. Which is probably foolish because we're from completely different worlds. Harrison closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. Patricia, I love you too. I love both of you so much it sometimes takes my breath away. Her eyes widened. You do. How could I not? You've given me back my life. Amelia has taught me how to laugh again, and you've shown me that my heart isn't broken beyond repair. I look forward to every day now because it means I get to see you both. But your friend is right about the complications. Richard isn't my friend. A friend would be happy that I'm healing, that I found people who matter to me. He's a business associate who's worried that happiness might make me less ruthless. Patricia searched his face. Are you sure about this? About us? Because if we try and it doesn't work, it won't just be my heart that breaks. Amelia adores you. She started calling you her bonus dad when she talks to her friends. The term bonus dad hit Harrison with unexpected force. Jake would always be his son, the child of his heart who shaped his understanding of fatherhood. But the idea that Amelia saw him as a father figure, that she'd claimed him in that innocent, complete way children, had filled him with pride and purpose. I'm sure, Harrison said firmly. I'm sure about you, about Amelia, about wanting to build a life together. The only question is whether you're willing to deal with people like Richard who don't understand what we have. Patricia smiled through her tears. For you and Amelia, I can deal with anything. Harrison kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, then with growing confidence as she kissed him back. It was nothing like kissing Claire had been, but it didn't need to be. This was different, knew its own kind of perfect. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Patricia rested her forehead against his chest. Camille's going to be so excited, she murmured. She's been asking when you're going to marry us and make it official. Harrison laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. She has she? She says families that love each other should live together so they can take care of each other every day. Smart kid, the smartest. She gets that from her mother. Harrison held Patricia close, marveling at how right this felt. Not like replacing what he'd lost, but like discovering something he hadn't known he needed. Outside, afternoon rain began to fall, but inside his house for the first time in months, everything felt exactly as it should be. The conversation Harrison had been both anticipating and dreading came on a quiet Sunday evening. Amelia was in the family room working on a puzzle while Harrison and Patricia cleaned up after dinner. The domestic routine had become so natural that Harrison sometimes forgot they didn't actually live together. Patricia, he said, drawing the last plate, we need to talk about where this is going. She nodded, having clearly been thinking the same thing. I know. We can't keep pretending this is just friendship. I don't want to pretend anymore. I love you. I love Amelia. I want you both here permanently. Patricia turned to face him fully, dish towel still in her hands. Harrison, that sounds wonderful, but we have to be realistic. I'm a single mother working as a nurse. You're a billionaire businessman. People will assume I'm after your money. Do I look like I care what people assume? You should care. Your reputation affects your business, your social standing, everything you built. Harrison set down the plate he'd been holding and took Patricia's hands. Everything I built was for Claire and Jake. Now they're gone. And I've spent 6 months learning that money and social standing don't mean anything if you don't have people to share them with. But Amelia and I come with complications. My ex-husband could resurface demanding money. Amelia's going to need college tuition, probably graduate school, if she really wants to be a doctor. You'd be taking on financial responsibilities that aren't yours. Those aren't complications. Patricia, those are the responsibilities that come with family, and I want them. From the family room, Amelia's voice called out, Mama, Mr. Webb, can you help me with this puzzle? I can't find the corner pieces. They joined her on the floor, working together to sort puzzle pieces by color and pattern. Harrison watched Amelia's face as she concentrated, her tongue poking out slightly the way it did when she was thinking hard. This child had somehow become as important to him as his own son had been. Amelia, he said carefully, how would you feel if your mom and I got married? Amelia's hand stilled on the puzzle pieces. She looked up at Harrison with serious eyes. Then at her mother, then back at Harrison. Are you asking because you feel sorry for us? She asked with the directness only children possessed. The question caught Harrison off guard. What do you mean? Some of the kids at school, their moms have boyfriends who are nice to them because they feel bad that their dads left. But then when the feeling sorry part goes away, the boyfriends leave too. Harrison felt his heart break a little for this wise 8-year-old who had learned too young that adults could disappoint you. He moved closer to her, taking her small hands in his larger ones. Amelia, I don't feel sorry for you. I feel lucky that you and your mom came into my life when I needed you most. Lucky that you're smart and funny and kind. Lucky that you trust me enough to let me help with homework and take you to the zoo. But what about Jake? Weren't you lucky to have him too? Harrison felt Patricia tense beside him, but he'd learned that Amelia's questions, however difficult, deserved honest answers. I was incredibly lucky to have Jake. He was my son, and I loved him very much. But loving Jake doesn't mean I can't love you, too. Hearts don't work like that. They get bigger when more people come into them. Amelia considered this solemnly. So you could love me like a dad loves a daughter, but still love Jake like a dad loves a son, exactly like that. And you love Mama like a husband loves a wife. Harrison glanced at Patricia, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I do. And we love you like a family loves each other. Yes, Amelia broke into the biggest smile Harrison had ever seen from her. Then yes, I want you to marry Mama so we can be a real family. She launched herself at Harrison, wrapping her arms around his neck with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just gotten exactly what she'd been hoping for. Over her head, Harrison met Patricia's eyes and saw his own emotions reflected there. Love, hope, and a little bit of terror at how much they were all risking. Are you sure about this? Patricia asked later after they'd tucked and excited Amelia into the guest room she'd been using more and more frequently. I've never been more sure of anything, Harrison replied. Patricia, will you marry me? She laughed, tears streaming down her face. You're supposed to get down on one knee. I don't have a ring yet. I don't need a ring. I just need you to be sure this is what you want. Harrison dropped to one knee right there in the hallway outside Amelia's room, taking Patricia's hands and looking up at her face. Patricia Johnson, you and your daughter have given me back my life. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my days trying to make you both as happy as you've made me? Yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely, yes. Their kiss was interrupted by the sound of Amelia's door opening. Did she say yes? Amelia asked, peering out at them. She said yes. Harrison confirmed. Amelia cheered, then seemed to remember she was supposed to be asleep. Sorry, she whispered loudly. I'm just really excited. Does this mean I can call you Dad? Harrison felt emotion overwhelm him. If you want to, I want to. I'd been practicing in my head for weeks. That night, after Patricia and Amelia had finally gone to sleep in what Harrison had started thinking of as their rooms, he sat in his study looking at the drawings Amelia had made over the past months. Every single one included him now, usually with a big smile and always as part of their little family unit. He thought about Jake, about the son he'd lost and the daughter he was gaining. About Claire, who would have loved Patricia's strength and Amelia's spirit. About the future he thought was over and the new beginning that was just starting. For the first time since the accident, Harrison Webb went to sleep planning a wedding instead of grieving a funeral. And for the first time in his life, he understood that love didn't diminish when shared. It multiplied. The announcement of Harrison's engagement to Patricia made the society pages within a week. Though not in the way he'd hoped. The headline in the city's premier gossip column read, Billionaires Rebound. Webb to marry the help. Harrison crumpled the newspaper and threw it across his office where it hit the wall and scattered pages across the expensive carpet. His assistant, Jennifer, had reluctantly brought him the article along with several others in similar vein. There's more, Jennifer said apologetically, setting down a stack of other publications. And your phone has been ringing all morning. Everyone wants a statement. Harrison scanned the headlines. From mansion to maid, Webb's questionable choice. Gold digger or genuine love? Inside Harrison Webb's controversial romance. The Nanny Diaries: How a Single Mother Landed a Billionaire. Each article was worse than the last, filled with speculation about Patricia's motives and snide comments about their unconventional relationship. Several quoted sources close to Webb, expressing concern about his mental state following his family's tragic death. Have Patricia or Amelia seen these? Harrison asked. I don't know, sir, but they're trending on social media. It's going to be hard to avoid. Harrison's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. We need to talk. Amelia heard some kids at school talking about the articles. She's upset. He left work immediately, driving home with a knot of dread in his stomach. He found Patricia and Amelia in the kitchen, but the usual warmth was replaced by an uncomfortable tension. Amelia looked up when he entered, her eyes red from crying. Dad, she said, the word that usually filled him with joy now breaking his heart. Why are people saying mean things about us in the newspaper? Harrison sat down beside her, struggling to find age-appropriate words for adult cruelty. Because some people don't understand that families can be created in different ways. They think love only counts if it happens in ways they recognize. But we do love each other, right? It's not pretend. It's absolutely not pretend. We love each other very much. Then why do they care? Patricia answered this time, her voice carefully controlled. Because your dad is very important and very wealthy, and some people think that means he should only marry other important, wealthy people. That's stupid, Amelia said with 8-year-old bluntness. Yes, it is. Harrison agreed. But stupid doesn't mean harmless. Are kids at school being mean to you? Amelia nodded miserably. Tommy Martinez said his mom thinks you're going to get tired of us and throw us away when you get bored. And Katie Williams said her dad thinks mama is only marrying you for money and doesn't really love you. Harrison felt rage build in his chest, hot and protective. These were children repeating the poison their parents had fed them, turning his daughter's joy into shame. Amelia, look at me, Harrison said firmly. I am never going to get tired of you or your mother. Never. And anyone who thinks your mom is marrying me for money doesn't know her at all. She tried to talk me out of proposing because she was worried about exactly this kind of reaction. She did, because your mom is the most honest, caring person I know. She worries more about other people's feelings than her own comfort. Patricia reached across the table and squeezed Harrison's hand. We can handle the gossip, she said quietly, but I'm worried about how this affects Amelia long term. Kids can be cruel, and if this follows her through school, then we'll change schools or hire tutors or move somewhere else entirely. Harrison's voice was fierce with determination. We'll do whatever it takes to protect her. You'd move? Patricia asked, surprised. Patricia, there's nothing tying me to the city except business. And I can run my company from anywhere. If staying here means Amelia gets bullied for having the wrong kind of family, then we go somewhere else. Amelia perked up slightly. Could we move somewhere with better zoos? Despite everything, Harrison found himself smiling. Definitely somewhere with better zoos. That evening, after Amelia had gone to bed, Harrison and Patricia sat in his study, planning their response to the media attention. Harrison wanted to release a statement, maybe even give an interview to set the record straight. Patricia was more cautious. The more we say, the more ammunition we give them, she pointed out. Maybe we should just let it die down naturally while our daughter gets harassed at school while people assume the worst about your character. I don't think so. Harrison's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. The caller ID showed Richard Sterling's name. Don't answer it, Patricia said, but Harrison was already picking up. Richard, Harrison, thank God. I've been calling all day. Have you seen the papers? I've seen them. This is a disaster. Our clients are asking questions, wondering if you're having some kind of breakdown. You need to do damage control immediately. What kind of damage control? Issue a statement saying you're taking time to grieve and that reports of an engagement are premature. Buy yourself some space to think this through rationally. Harrison felt something cold settle in his stomach. You want me to deny my engagement? I want you to protect your reputation and your business. Harrison, you're not thinking clearly. This woman and her kid have you twisted around their finger and you can't see it because you're vulnerable. Richard, I'm going to say this once and I want you to listen carefully. I love Patricia. I love Amelia. I'm going to marry Patricia and adopt Amelia, and anyone who has a problem with that can go to hell. Including our clients, including you. You're making a huge mistake. No, Richard, I made a mistake 6 months ago when I let grief convince me that my life was over. Patricia and Amelia showed me was just beginning again. If you can't be happy for me, then maybe we need to reconsider our partnership. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you that I'm done apologizing for finding happiness. I'm done pretending that money and social status matter more than love. And I'm especially done with people who think they can judge my family. Harrison hung up and found Patricia staring at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. You just potentially blew up a 20-year business relationship for us? She said. Good, I should have done it weeks ago. Patricia stood up and moved to the window. looking out at the gardens that were just beginning to bloom with spring flowers. Harrison, maybe we should slow down. Maybe the timing isn't right. The timing is perfect. Patricia looked at me. She turned and he saw doubt creeping into her eyes. Are you having second thoughts? I'm having protective thoughts about Amelia. About you? About what this kind of scrutiny does to people? Harrison joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Do you remember what you told me the first day we met? That Amelia's job was just to be a kid and do well in school. Yes. Well, my job is to make sure she can do that safely and happily. Your job is to love us both and let us love you back. Everything else, the gossip, the judgment, the people who don't understand, that's just noise. Patricia leaned back against his chest. It's loud noise. Then we'll turn up our music louder. The next morning, Harrison did something he'd never done in his entire business career. He called a press conference not to announce a merger or acquisition, but to introduce the world to his fiancée and future daughter. And for the first time in months, he felt like himself again. Confident, determined, and absolutely certain he was making the right choice. The press conference was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at Harrison's corporate headquarters. Patricia had wanted to skip it, but Harrison insisted she and Amelia be there. We're a family, he said firmly. We faced things together. The night before, they practiced potential questions in Harrison's study while Amelia worked on homework nearby. She'd insisted on coming despite both adults' concerns about exposing her to media scrutiny. I want to tell everyone how happy we are, Amelia had declared with the confidence only children possessed. And I want to make sure they spell my name right when they write about our family. What if they ask mean questions? Patricia had asked gently. Then I'll tell them the truth, that you and Dad love each other and take good care of me, and that's what families do. Now standing in the conference room at Webb Enterprises, Harrison felt a familiar presentation calm settle over him. This was his territory, his domain. Here he could control the narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison began addressing the crowd of reporters and cameras. 6 months ago I lost my wife Claire and my son Jake in a tragic accident. I thought my life was over. I was wrong. He gestured for Patricia and Amelia to join him at the podium. Amelia had insisted on wearing her best dress, a navy blue one with white flowers that Patricia had bought for Easter. She stood between the two adults, holding both their hands, completely unintimidated by the flashing cameras. I want to introduce you to my fiancée Patricia Johnson and my future daughter Amelia Johnson. They didn't just save my life. They gave me a new life. One filled with laughter and purpose and love. A reporter immediately raised her hand. Mr. Webb, critics are saying this relationship moved very quickly. How do you respond to suggestions that you're not thinking clearly due to grief? Harrison smiled. The question easier than he'd expected. I've been thinking more clearly in the past 3 months than I have in years. Grief didn't cloud my judgment. It clarified what actually matters. The people you love and who love you back. Miss Johnson, another reporter called out, how do you respond to speculation about your motives for this relationship? Patricia stepped closer to the microphone, her voice steady despite Harrison's knowledge that she was nervous. I respond by saying that anyone who knows me knows I've never needed anyone to take care of me financially. I have a good job, a college degree, and a strong work ethic. I fell in love with Harrison because he's kind, generous, and wonderful with my daughter. The money was actually a complication, not an attraction. Amelia, a younger reporter, said gently, how you feel about Mr. Webb becoming your stepdad. Amelia stepped up to the microphone with the seriousness of someone delivering an important speech. He's already my dad in my heart. He helps me with homework and takes me to the zoo and reads me stories. He makes my mama smile all the time now instead of just sometimes. And he makes really good pancakes. Laughter rippled through the room and Harrison felt some of the tension ease. This was going better than he'd hoped. Mr. Webb, another reporter asked, are you planning to adopt Amelia legally? Absolutely. Amelia is my daughter in every way that matters. Making it legal is just paperwork. What about your business interest? Are you concerned about how this might affect Webb Enterprises? Harrison's expression hardened slightly. Anyone who wants to do business with me based on who I marry isn't someone I want as a client. Webb Enterprises will continue to be successful because we deliver results, not because of my personal life. After the press conference, they went out for ice cream to celebrate. Amelia was still buzzing with excitement from her television debut. Did you see how many cameras there were? I think I'm going to be famous now. Maybe I should be a reporter when I grow up instead of a doctor. You can be anything you want, Harrison told her, or you can be lots of things. There's no rule that says you have to pick just one career. Really, could I be a doctor and a reporter and maybe a zookeeper, too? If anyone could do all three, it would be you. That weekend, they went ring shopping together. Harrison had wanted to surprise Patricia, but she'd insisted that if she was going to wear it for the rest of her life, she should have some input in choosing it. The jewelry store staff treated them with professional courtesy, though Harrison noticed a few whispered conversations and pointed looks. Amelia was oblivious to the undercurrents, fascinated by the displays of sparkling gems. That one looks like a star, she said, pointing to a solitary diamond. And that one looks like a flower. Oh, and that one looks like ice cream. Patricia gravitated towards simpler designs, classics that wouldn't look dated in 20 years. She tried on several rings, but kept coming back to a vintage-inspired piece with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones in a delicate Art Deco setting. It's beautiful, she said, admiring how it caught the light, but it's too much. Harrison looked at the price tag and nearly laughed. The amount that seemed extravagant to Patricia wouldn't cover his monthly wine budget. But he understood her concern wasn't really about money. It was about feeling worthy of such luxury. Patricia, he said gently, I want you to have something beautiful that reminds you every day how much I love you. This ring doesn't make you more valuable to me, but I hope it makes you feel as precious as you are. Amelia, who had been listening to this exchange, nodded sagely. Mama, you always tell me I deserve good things when I work hard and am kind to people. You work harder than anyone and you're the kindest person ever. You deserve the pretty ring. Patricia looked at her daughter, then at Harrison, then back at the ring. Okay, she said finally, but I'm keeping my nursing job. Ring or no ring, I like working. I wouldn't dream of asking you to quit. Harrison said, meaning it. Besides, Amelia is going to need good health insurance when she's studying to be a doctor. Reporter zookeeper. That evening, they started planning the wedding in earnest. They decided on something small and intimate, just family and close friends. For Harrison, that meant his assistant Jennifer and Mrs. Henderson, his former housekeeper. For Patricia, it meant her mother and a few nursing school friends. Where do you want to have it? Harrison asked as they sat around his kitchen table with bridal magazines Amelia had insisted they buy. Somewhere Amelia can run around if she gets bored, Patricia said practically. The backyard, Amelia announced. We could have it in the garden where the roses are, and I could pick flowers for decorations. Harrison thought about his formal gardens, imagining them filled with flowers and laughter and celebration. That sounds perfect. Really? You don't want some fancy hotel ballroom? Patricia, the only thing I want is to marry you surrounded by people who love us. Everything else is just decoration. Amelia looked up from the magazine she'd been flipping through. Can I be the flower girl and the ring bearer? I promise I won't lose the rings. You can be whatever you want to be, Harrison said. It's your wedding. Later that night, after Amelia had fallen asleep on the couch during their movie, Harrison carried her upstairs to what had become her permanent room. Patricia followed, helping to tuck her in. She's gotten so comfortable here, Patricia observed, smoothing Amelia's hair. Good, this is her home now. Sometimes I can't believe this is really happening. 6 months ago, I was a single mother working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Now I'm engaged to a wonderful man who loves my daughter as much as I do. Harrison pulled Patricia close. 6 months ago, I was a broken man who thought his life was over. Funny how much can change when the right people walk into your world. Do you think Claire and Jake would approve? Harrison considered this seriously. It was a question he'd asked himself many times. I think Claire would love you. You're strong and independent and fierce about protecting the people you love. Those were all qualities she admired. And I think Jake would have been crazy about Amelia. They would have been great siblings. She asks about them sometimes. Wants to know what they were like if they would have liked her. What do you tell her? That they would have loved her as much as we do and that loving her doesn't mean loving them any less. Harrison kissed the top of Patricia's head, marveling at her wisdom. Have I mentioned lately that I'm marrying the smartest woman in the world? Only every day. Good. I don't want you to forget. As they prepared for bed and what would soon officially be their shared home, Harrison felt a contentment he'd never experienced before. Not the sharp satisfaction of business success or the familiar comfort of long marriage, but something new and bright and full of possibility. Tomorrow they would face more questions, more judgment, more people who didn't understand their unconventional path to love. But tonight, they were simply a family planning their future together, and that was enough. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like a blessing. Harrison woke early in the guest room where he'd spent the night, banished by Patricia's insistence that it was bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony. It's silly superstition, he protested. Maybe, Patricia had replied, but humor me. I want to do at least a few things traditionally. Now, looking out at the garden, where white chairs and flower arrangements awaited their guests, Harrison felt a nervous excitement he hadn't experienced since his first wedding 25 years ago. But this was different, better. He wasn't a young man making promises he hoped he could keep. He was a mature man who understood exactly what he was committing to and couldn't wait to begin. Mrs. Henderson arrived early to help with final preparations, bustling around the kitchen with the authority of someone who'd once run this household. Mr. Webb, she said, straightening his tie for the third time. I need you to know how happy I am about today. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means a lot. Miss Patricia is good for you. And that little girl, she's brought life back to this house in ways I never thought I'd see again. Harrison smiled, thinking of Amelia, who was probably driving her mother crazy with excitement upstairs. She certainly has. Miss Claire would be happy for you, Mrs. Henderson added gently, she never would have wanted you to spend the rest of your life alone. Before Harrison could respond, Amelia came racing down the stairs in her flower girl dress, a confection of pale pink silk that made her look like a princess. Dad, Mama looks so beautiful. You're going to cry when you see her. Is she ready? Almost. She's putting on her lipstick and talking to herself in the mirror. Grandma says that's normal for brides. Patricia's mother had arrived the night before, a dignified woman in her 60s who'd raised Patricia with the same quiet strength her daughter now possessed. She'd been politely reserved with Harrison at first, clearly protective of her daughter and granddaughter. But by the end of the evening, after watching Harrison help Amelia with her bedtime routine and seeing the way he looked at Patricia, she'd pulled him aside. You make my girls happy, she'd said simply. That's all I've ever wanted for them. Now, as guests began arriving in the garden, Harrison felt a deep sense of rightness about the day. The guest list was small but meaningful. Jennifer had come with her husband, beaming with pride at her boss's happiness. A few of Patricia's nursing colleagues clustered near the rose bushes, admiring the decorations Amelia had indeed helped arrange. Even Dr. Martinez from Children's Hospital had come, the man who'd given Patricia her chance and become a friend in the process. Notably absent were most of Harrison's former social circle and business associates. Richard Sterling hadn't responded to the invitation at all, but Harrison found he didn't care. The people here today were the ones who mattered, the ones who understood that love came in many forms and deserved celebration rather than judgment. The string quartet Patricia had chosen began playing, and Harrison took his place under the archway of white roses and greenery. His hands were steady, his heart full as he waited for his bride. Amelia appeared first, walking slowly down the aisle with a basket of rose petals, her face serious with concentration as she scattered them with precision. When she reached the front, she gave Harrison a thumbs up and whispered loudly, I didn't drop any rings. The music shifted to the wedding march, and Harrison's breath caught as Patricia appeared at the top of the garden steps. She wore a simple but elegant dress in champagne silk, her hair swept up with small white flowers woven through the dark strands. But it was her smile that stopped his heart, radiant with joy and love and absolute certainty. She walked down the aisle alone as she'd requested. I've been independent this long, she'd said when Harrison offered to find someone to give her away. I think I can manage to walk 30 feet on my own. When she reached him, Harrison took her hands and felt the last piece of his broken heart click back into place. Dearly beloved, the minister began, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Harrison and Patricia, two people who found love in the most unexpected place, in healing. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, words that spoke of second chances and chosen families and love that grew stronger through adversity. When Harrison promised to love and protect both Patricia and Amelia for the rest of his life, he saw tears in more than a few eyes. Patricia's vows were equally moving, thanking Harrison for showing her that love didn't always come when you expected it, but when you needed it most. You didn't just ask me to marry you, she said, her voice drawn despite the emotion. You asked us to become your family, and we said yes with everything we have. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Amelia cheered before they'd even kissed, causing laughter to ripple through the small crowd. Harrison kissed his bride with all the love and promise he could convey, then scooped up Amelia for a three-way hug that felt like coming home. The reception was held right there in the garden with a dinner catered by Patricia's favorite restaurant and dancing on the terrace as the sun set. Harrison's first dance with his new wife was to the same song he and Claire had danced to at their wedding, but it felt completely different, not a replacement or a repetition, but something entirely new. Any regrets? Patricia asked as they swayed together. Only that we didn't meet sooner, Harrison replied, spinning her gently. I don't know. I think we met exactly when we were supposed to. Later, Harrison danced with Amelia, lifting her up so she could rest her chin on his shoulder as they moved slowly to the music. Dad, she said, testing out the word she could now use officially. Are you happy? Happier than I ever thought possible. Good, because I have plans for our family. Oh, what kind of plans? Well, first we need to get a dog. Every family needs a dog. Then we need to plant a vegetable garden so we can grow our own food. And then we need to have family game night every Friday. And maybe we could get a bigger car so we can take long trips to see things. Harrison laughed, delighted by her elaborate vision of their future. Those all sound like excellent plans. Oh, and one more thing. What's that? I think Mama wants a baby brother or sister for me. She hasn't said anything, but sometimes she looks at little kids in the store with this sad, happy face. Do you think that would be okay? The question caught Harrison completely off guard. Another child hadn't even occurred to him, but as he considered it, the idea didn't frighten him the way it might have months ago. Would you like a little brother or sister? I think so. Someone to teach stuff to and help take care of. Plus, if there are two kids, you and Mama can't focus all your worrying on just me. We don't worry about you, Harrison protested. Amelia gave him a look far too knowing for her age. Dad, you guys worry about me constantly. Mama checks on me like 5 times after I go to sleep. And you ask me how school was every single day, even when nothing interesting happens. Which is sweet, but also kind of a lot of pressure. Harrison realized his 8-year-old daughter had just given him profound insight into parenting. You're pretty smart, you know that? I get it from both my parents now, she said matter-of-factly, as the evening wound down and guests began to leave. Harrison found himself standing with Patricia and Amelia in the garden where they just promised to love each other forever. The light strung through the trees cast everything in a warm golden glow, and for a moment, Harrison could almost see his future spreading out before him like a map of adventures yet to come. So, Patricia said, slipping her hand into his, how does it feel to be a married man again? It feels like the beginning of everything I didn't know I wanted. Harrison replied honestly. And how does it feel to be a dad again? She asked more quietly. Harrison looked down at Amelia, who was collecting flower petals in her basket with the same determination she brought to everything. It feels like I never stopped being one, just like I never stopped believing in family. Even when I thought mine was over, 6 months ago, Harrison Webb had been a broken man sitting alone in an empty mansion, convinced that his capacity for love had died with his wife and son. Tonight he was a husband and father again, surrounded by people who had chosen to love him and whom he had chosen to love in return. The house that had felt like a mausoleum was now filled with laughter and argument and the sweet chaos of family life. Amelia's artwork covered the refrigerator. Patricia's nursing textbooks were stacked on the coffee table next to Harrison's business journals. The kitchen smelled like home-cooked meals and fresh flowers. As they walked back to the house together, Harrison's new family chattering about tomorrow's plans and next week's adventures, he realized that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant making room in your heart for new love alongside the old, for new dreams that honored the past while embracing the future. Claire and Jake would always be part of him, would always hold a special place in his heart. But Patricia and Amelia had shown him that love wasn't finite. Hearts didn't break when they opened to new people, they expanded, growing bigger and stronger with each person who chose to stay. Inside the house, Amelia ran upstairs to get ready for bed, still chattering with excitement about the day. Patricia paused in the foyer, looking around at the home that was now officially hers too. It's going to take some getting used to, she admitted. All of this. We have the rest of our lives to figure it out, Harrison said, pulling her close. And something tells me it's going to be the best adventure any of us has ever had. Upstairs, they tucked Amelia into bed together, a routine that felt both new and familiar. She insisted on saying goodnight to both of them, hugging Harrison extra tight. Thank you for marrying us, she whispered. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. Sweet dreams. Later, as Harrison and Patricia lay in their bed together for the first time as husband and wife, Patricia curled against his chest with a contentment that made his heart full. Harrison, Amelia asked me today if we were going to have more children. Harrison smiled in the darkness. She asked me the same thing. What did you tell her? That we'd have to see what the future brings. What did you tell her? The same thing. But Patricia, yes. I want you to know that whatever the future brings, whatever our family looks like 5 years or 10 years from now, this is already more than I ever thought I'd have again. You and Amelia are enough. You're everything. Patricia lifted her head to kiss him softly. You're everything to us too. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Outside, spring rain began to fall gently on the gardens where they'd promised to love each other forever. Inside, Harrison Webb fell asleep, surrounded by the quiet sounds of his family. Patricia's steady breathing, the soft whisper of Amelia talking to herself in her room down the hall, the settling sounds of a house that was once again truly home. For the first time in his life, he understood that happy endings weren't really endings at all. They were beginnings, moments when love won out over fear and hope triumphed over despair. And this was just the first chapter of what he knew would be the greatest story of his life.